England, they came in the company of a Reverend John Fiske in the year 1637. Perhaps they had fallen out of favor with the Stuarts. Or perhaps they were of a pioneering spirit. But inasmuch as they came with John Fiske, it would seem that perhaps they were members of those who tried to purify the Church of England. They were called Puritans. And when they couldn't do that, they found a new home in which they could start or continue their religion. Perhaps that's the reason why they came to the Americas. In any case, Elizabeth and Edward and their three small sons, Daniel, Thomas, and John, joined the company and landed. By the way, they missed the Mayflower by 17 years. They landed in Charleston, just outside of Boston, in Massachusetts, in the year 1637. Edward and Elizabeth settled for a short time in Charleston, Massachusetts. Then they moved from there to Scituate. Doesn't look like that, but it's spelled S-C-I-T-U-A-T-E. And then finally they moved to Chelmsford, which is now Lowell. Edward resided with his son Major Thomas Hinchman until his death on October 27, 1668, at the age of 70. His wife was very wise because shortly after the death of Edward, Elizabeth married the Right Reverend John Fiske. Let's check a couple of things about the sons of Edward. If indeed the sons are Daniel, John, and Thomas, there are some interesting things that we find. Let's talk about Daniel for just a moment. He remained in Massachusetts during his lifetime, as did also his brother Thomas. Daniel was born in England about 1627. When he came to the United States, or to the Americas, and grew up, he became a school teacher, but he was also involved in public affairs. He was one of the party that laid out and founded the city of Worcester in Massachusetts. It is said that he fought in the King Philip's War with great distinction and achieved the rank of captain. Daniel was twice married. He first married a Sarah, whose last name we've not been able to find, and by her had 5 children. Upon her death, he married Mary Poole, and they had 4 children. A grandson of this Daniel, which would make him a great-grandson of Edward, also called Daniel, was a publisher and a bookseller in Boston. His printer was a man by the name of William Fleet, who was the son-in-law of a Mrs. Vergoose. They together published the first edition of Mother Goose in the United States, or in the Americas. Daniel was also responsible for printing the first edition of the English Bible in America. It had a removable title which he could take off if there was any danger of the Bible being confiscated by the authorities, and then put back on when the danger was removed. Just another story about Daniel. Thomas Hancock, who was an uncle of John Hancock of Declaration of Independence fame, was a friend of Daniel Hinchman. And as a matter of fact, he married his daughter Lydia. It was said of Thomas Hancock, once Thomas aligned himself with Lydia, and incidentally the Hinchman money, his rise was swift. I found along the Daniel line a preacher called Nathaniel. And it was said of him that he was a hellfire and damnation preacher. And I thought when I read that, go get him, Nathaniel. I have found little information about Major Thomas Hinchman, the second son of Edward and Elizabeth, nor of a William who was purported to have been born after they arrived in the colonies, and also a daughter Elizabeth. That's for more research. John, the third son of Edward and Elizabeth, who came as a small child with them to the Americas, was born prior to